Ladies and gentlemen, hey yo, what's up, fellas? We got betting for week 2. I got 4 bets that I have in currently for this week. This is not counting player props, which we can talk through some of those that I have as well throughout this video, which was fantastic in week 1. Had about 25 player props, like 80-something% of those cashed. Very soft lines in general, as a lot more books are getting their props out early in the week. They're getting their props out on Mondays and Tuesdays, meaning that a bunch of news comes out during the week. It's going to affect those, or at least the numbers are going to change, right? And that's when we could hammer them over on Prize Picks. But let's get in right now to the video, and we can start with my first bet of the day. If you like this video at any point, by the way, hit the subscribe or like button. My first bet of the day is going to be what I see as an easy one, but no bet's actually easy, so you maybe take the other side of this one. But it's going to be Buffalo and Miami over 48. These were 2 of the 5 fastest teams in neutral pace last week. Now, what does that mean? When the games were at a neutral spot, when they were close, when they were within a possession, these teams played very fast. They got a lot of plays off. They were not milking the play clock. They were snapping it pretty quickly, and these 2 teams were up there. They were both top 5 in that area, meaning that they were playing very fast. Both Buffalo, as we expect, but also Miami now playing fast, and they get Will Fuller back this week, which should only help the over. And I think you should expect a massive bounce back game from Josh Allen. Josh Allen has a positive 16% pass blocking advantage this week against this Miami secondary. And this is a solid Miami secondary because Xavier Howard's back there, but let's not get it twisted. Byron Jones looked very bad last year. It's yet to be seen what happens this year with Byron Jones, but Xavier Howard, they have one guy there, right? If he tries to go on Steph Diggs, who will move into the slot, and that might not be a great matchup for Xavier Howard, you're going to have Emmanuel Sanders, who ran 55 routes, Cole Beasley, who ran 55 routes, wide receiver 4, and Gabriel Davis, who will be used. This is just an overwhelming amount of players in 4 wide receiver sets for this Miami secondary, no matter how good Xavier Howard is. And on the opposite side of this one, what do we want to score points? Well, obviously, the more time the quarterbacks have to pass, like Josh Allen's offensive line advantage, the better. But also, you can look at Tua's advantage, because last week, Buffalo ranked outside the top 20 in ability to generate pressure, and that was against a very bad Pittsburgh offensive line. Very bad. In this game, Miami's 3-headed backfield will have a positive 30%, one of the best run blocking advantage matchups on the ground, which should always help. You don't want to see too much there, but big plays, explosive plays, when you have that good of an advantage, are always there for players like Myles Gaskin. And if you look at week 1, maybe the best stat to look at for really a lot of things, especially betting and judging teams, EPA, expected points added, it's going to basically give you a neutral spot for both these teams. Both these teams are pretty damn average in both offense and defense, so it's not like there's going to be a shutdown defense here. So it should be a solid game. And when the average over-under these days is around 50, and this one comes in at 48, depending on where you can get it, this is a good spot to be betting. And what I'm pulling up on the screen right now is a tool called OddsJam. They're a new partner of the show. And OddsJam basically is a betting board, but there's a lot more that OddsJam actually has, and it's going to be very useful for not just this video, but actually what we're doing when we're trying to take bets. They're going to basically put in gray the most likely lines, the lines that are basically where right now all the markets are, dark gray right here. And this is where you can find your betting spots. If you hover over, this is the Barstool Sportsbook. So I took the over 48. The over 48 right now is a solid bet. It's not juiced up, and you can get it basically at minus 113, minus 120. The closer that this is to a positive number, the better. So basically, if you see minus 120, that's good. But if you have the ability to go better on 888 in Canada, you might as well get it for 110. You can keep scrolling through. What is going to be your best bet? Right here, you have Betfred at minus 105. These are going to be solid spots to be looking at. So minus 105, if you have access to that book, is this best spot to get it. You're probably more than likely going to have to settle for somewhere around minus 115, minus 110 on this bet, but that's a good spot to be in for the over 48. Maybe you have it, depending on where you are. At the over 47, you're going to pay a little bit more juice. The juice basically means that you have to put $120 on here to win 100 at minus 120, whereas if you just take the over 48 a half a point, you only have to put 115 to win 100. So hopefully that makes sense, but this is great because they have it not just for the over-unders, they have it for everything. I mean, look at the offerings that they have. I mean, they're able to compare for everything. For the first quarter, point spread, second, the amount of touchdowns, is it going to be overtime, a winning margin by a certain amount of points, the money line, the total, and the spread, the obvious. So it's pretty good. We'll be using this, as I have been using this, to compare all these different sports books just across the world, not just the United States, depending on where you're tuning in from. So that is going to be solid. They have arbitrage. They have a bunch of other betting tools. You can check it out on OddsJam. They'll be the ones that we'll be using for the board throughout this video. And if you use the code Sally, you get 30% off if you want any of their exclusive packages that they had. But the odds board is definitely one that I would recommend. That is the first bet that we're going to be looking at, the over there. So we have an over under. It looks like a solid one. I think it's probably going to be juiced up as the week goes on. The second one, we're going to have a spread pick. And I'm on right now Denver -5 against Jacksonville. Denver ranked last week top 8 in both offense, believe it or not, offensive efficiency, right? Both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency in week 1. Denver projects this specific week to have a positive 16% pass blocking advantage. So time for Teddy Bridgewater. Now, of course, they end up losing Jerry Jeudy to a high ankle sprain. Says he'll be back in a month. I doubt he'll be fully healthy in a month. High ankle sprains usually 6 to 8 weeks to get really healthy, let alone game speed. But they have probably the best wide receiver 4 in the league, and that's going to be Tim Patrick sliding in now as the outside receiver. Jacksonville in week 1. Jacksonville getting destroyed by Houston in week 1. This Jacksonville team looks brutal. Number 31 in pressure. Could not generate pressure. Number 25 in total defense. And now you're going up against what was one of the better pass blocking units and overall efficient offense in week 1. This is a massive mismatch. I'm surprised this isn't a -8 line. It's at -5 now. I bet it moves to -6.5 by the end of the week. And Denver should also be able to run the ball. You had the big 70-yard rushing touchdown for over 100 yards from Melvin Gordon, but both he and Javonte Williams saw success. They're going to have a positive run blocking advantage in this one, and Jacksonville in week 1 finished outside the top 20 and not just tackling, so that's good for a guy in Javonte Williams who breaks tackles, and college football's record breaker at UNC for the rookie breaking tackles, saw about 50% of the snaps last week. Not just tackling, but also yards before contact. So the guys were getting 1.33 yards before contact last week on this Houston team, a Houston team that had a bunch of dust balls on that team. I mean, Melvin Gordon looks like a spry chicken compared to Rex Burkhead and Mark Ingram and David Johnson. And on the opposite side of how good Denver looked from an EPA, expected points added standpoint, it was the exact opposite from the side of Jacksonville. Bottom 8 in both offensive and defensive expected points added. They look really bad just in general, right? And there's something to look at that Jacksonville played the second fastest pace. So can they have these big explosive plays with all the receivers that they have? I mean, maybe, but I think it's a little bit skewed. They played the second fastest pace in neutral game environment, but that game wasn't neutral for a while. I mean, they were down by 2 scores pretty quick in that game. So you're looking at a very small sample of not just one game from week 1, but like 1/4 of that game that was actually close. So I wouldn't trust that all that much. Trevor Lawrence this week is not going to have good pass protection. Last week, he ended up ranking number 28 this entire offense in passing expected points added. Not good. And this week now he's going to have a negative 20% pass blocking advantage against the number 9 overall defense from week 1. This is just a terrible spot for the Jacksonville offense. It's a solid spot for both the defense and offense of Denver. So I took the -5, and I feel good right now because the spread is apparently moving to -6 right here is where the -110 odds are. At -5, you can still find that on some books at around -125 if you have the Borgata. FanDuel is somewhere in this area as well if you want to go to FanDuel. But if you want to just come down to here where the spread is, I still like the -6. I think this should probably be, like I said, a -8 line based on where I have it. So get it at -6 right here. No matter which bet you take is going to be fine. The -5.5 is also fine. But -6, -5.5, wherever you can find it with the best juice. All the numbers at -6 right now look really good. But depending on where your book is, I think that's a solid spot to go. So this is going to be the -6 lines. DraftKings is -110. Fox Bet, all the big sports books that are widely available. My bookie, OddsJam, right here. OddsJam has their own actually. So whichever one you're going to be looking at here to be playing from, it's basically all going to give you the best lines. OddsJam has a -108, which is nice. It's just going to give you a little bit. Sugar House is a little bit better than FanDuel if you have the ability. But for the most part, FanDuel, DraftKings, Fox Bet, these ones, Points Bet, they're all the same at -110 odds at the -106. But now if you're trying to get the -5 on this betting line still, I would go to FanDuel if you have access to multiple books. As of this recording, they're at -115 odds. So for the exact same bet at -5 that I got, it's only going to cost you $115 to win 100, as opposed to if you went to DraftKings, you have to put up $125 to win 100, right? That's a $10 difference for no reason. You're getting the same exact bet. If you have access to both, this is like going to the store and seeing that the exact same clothing is on sale, the exact same brand and everything, next door at the store next door for $10 less, but for some reason you're buying it for more. Be sure to shop your lines. That's why OddsJam is going to be very beneficial for you. Next up is our third bet, and this one is shocking to me. -3, I got the Rams versus the Colts. If you saw the Colts week 1, they kept it close, but they were brutal. I mean, Carson Wentz was not as bad as he was last year, but he was not as good as he was 3 years ago. I mean, Carson Wentz was just an average quarterback, and that's how he looked in week 1. And maybe that's all the Colts want if they can get the running game and the offensive line healthy. But that offensive line did not look good week 1. You know who looked good week 1? Maybe one of the only favorites to actually show up, like Tampa Bay, massive favorite, doesn't really do much. A favorite in the Green Bay Packers shows up, doesn't do much. Jacksonville, a favorite, gets absolutely blown off. A lot of favorites lost week 1. Maybe the only favorite that looked really, really good, that was a massive 8-point favorite, was the Rams on Sunday Night Football versus the Bears. Destroyed them. Matthew Stafford, as advertised, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Everybody got involved, whether it was Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson appears to be the wide receiver 3 out there, the young second-year player. Everybody got involved. The defense looked great, right? This staley designed defense with the cover 2 up top absolutely stagmented Andy Dalton, and they got so much pressure on that offensive line. And don't be shocked. Look, this Colts offensive line is supposed to be good, but it's banged up. They have players gone for the year. They have Quentin Nelson still trying to get back to 100% health here. I want to show you something on how good the Rams were week 1. This is a chart basically made, I believe, by rbsdm.com. And what this is the higher and up to the right. So up and to the right here were the best teams from week 1 on both an expected points basis on offense and defense. In the bottom left were the worst teams. So you can see the Packers had a terrible week. The Titans had a terrible week. The Falcons had a terrible terrible week. This is how bad that they were on an expected points basis. So this is the average right here in the middle. This is how good the Rams were. We saw how good the Saints played, right? The Saints were fantastic. The Rams were fantastic. This is their offense. Their offense is all the way to the right. The offense was the best offense in week 1, and their defense was basically a top 5 defense. The higher up you get on this chart means your defense was great. So the Cardinals, the Eagles, the Saints had the best defense last week, and basically right next to that defense is going to be the Rams next as like a top 5 defense and the number 1 offense from week 1. Let's not overthink this. The Colts in week 1 were bottom 10 in EPA. They were the exact opposite. So if I pull back up this chart right now and we look at the Colts, they're in this bottom left quadrant. They weren't as bad as the Packers, the Titans, or the Falcons, but they're basically right there as a bottom 5 team. You can say that the Bears were probably worse, maybe the Giants, but the Giants on offense were a little bit better than the Colts, believe it or not. It's not about how many points you put up, it's how expected points and efficient you are on those points. That's exactly what people who are sharps and bet on sports are actually looking at. They're not looking at what the finished product was, because environments and plays breaking down and getting luckier, the ball bouncing one way is not all going to be taken into account like an expected points efficiency stat will. So last week, the Colts ranked 30th, bottom 3 in the NFL in coverage after 1 week, while you're going to now have the Rams this week going to be able to pick apart this Colts offensive line. It's a negative 37% pass blocking advantage for the Colts offensive line, the one that we think is fantastic. Already down 2 bodies on their offensive line. Quentin Nelson is banged up. And on the opposite side of that one, the Rams are going to be able to pass the ball or run the ball if they want to. They have a 38% run blocking advantage, and Darrell Henderson got basically a full role in week 1. We'll see if Sony Michel plays more this week, getting accustomed to the team not being there all that long, but they're going to be able to attack them in all fields, whether it's the short, intermediate, or deep based on how their receiving core and tight ends are set up this week. And in week 1, this is going to be an interesting matchup, just kind of a fun stat. We'll see what to make of it. Week 1, the fastest paced team in neutral environments was the Rams. The slowest 32nd paced team in neutral environments was the Colts. So basically what this is saying is that the Colts play slow. They don't really have this big play upside. T.Y. Hilton is old and he's also hurt. Michael Pittman doesn't really go downfield. Zach Pascal doesn't go downfield. They don't have this deep threat, play quick, pick up 25-yard chunk plays in their offense. They don't have that in the passing game when they got 3 different guys, maybe even 4 on the Rams that do. So they're able to have those big plays if they fall behind to cover this spread. If the Colts start falling behind, they're a run-first team. It's really hard to see them getting back into the game and covering the spread. Another advantage to taking the -3 on the Rams. And these are the money line bets on Odds Jam right now. Like it's not that crazy. Like this is basically indicating that -3 might actually be moving to only -2 at this point for the Rams, in which I would actually slam it again, because on some books you could only have to lay -180 for the Rams at this point. That's usually like a -2 spread. A -1 spread will start to get down to like the -30s. So this is around the -3 spread right here at the -200. So this is the money line spreads if you wanted to take a money line. I'm fine going with the -3 if you're somebody who's looking to do parlays. I don't really do many parlays all that much, but this is a fine spot to be taking. I like their money line a lot. I also like their obvious -3 on the line on Odds Jam. Check it out. 2 bets to go, and this one seems like a kind of simple one. Maybe I'm overthinking it if I don't do it. So it's going to be New England -4.5. It's -5 in a lot of places, but I got a -4.5 early on at PointsBet, and that is going to be against the Jets. And this matchup for them is going to be fantastic. I mean, we can look at it right now. New England struggled, or the Jets struggled on offense in week 1. They were bottom 8 in EPA. So if we pull up that EPA chart yet again, you're going to see how bad the Jets were. Now, as you can see right here, the Jets are in this left quadrant, upper left quadrant, which it wasn't the worst overall performance in terms of offense and defense, but it was bad on offense. I mean, this line right here, basically, all the teams to the left of this were the only teams worse on offense. And those 3 teams are right here in this bottom quarter. The Jets were bottom 5 on offense in week 1. And on defense, they weren't that much better. They were just slightly above average, if that. So this is going to be a nice spot in general for the New England Patriots, who are the exact opposite. They played fantastic last week. If it wasn't for Ramondre Stevenson fumbling and Damian Harris fumbling, it's probably a W for that team, and Mac Jones playing very good after the first drive of the game. You saw last week the New York Jets end up losing Mekhi Becton, and their rookie Elijah Vera Tucker was really struggling. This offensive line was giving up pressure left and right. Poor Zach Wilson. They ranked number 29 in pass protection. Number 29 in pass protection. This offensive line that was supposed to be revamped is already banged up and struggling. And New England ranked number 10 in coverage and number 13th in pressure. They're going to get a lot of pressure this week on Zach Wilson. Advantage, of course, New England. And they have Mac Jones going, who's really not going to be making that many mistakes, as you saw last week. They played a very sound game, both defensively and offensively, was New England. And to prove that, to show you that they played very sound offensively and defensively, look who's smack dab in the middle right here. The New England Patriots. They weren't absolutely elite on offense, but they were very sound. They weren't absolutely elite on defense, but they're right in the middle. They were right around, just slightly actually above the NFL average. This point where all the points meet was the average. They are slightly above that on both offense and defense. That's a pretty damn good place to be for a defense that had nobody last year because they all sat out for COVID and is going with a rookie quarterback and a whole new receiving core. And now Mac Jones is going to get to go from Miami's secondary, which we talked about earlier, Xavier Howard, solid secondary, to the number 31 ranked secondary after week 1 in the New York Jets. Expect to see a lot more Jacoby Myers activity. He had 9 targets targets and 6 catches, but more downfield usage as he goes from playing Xavier Howard a lot on his 6 catches for 40-something yards to now going to Michael Carter. No, not the running back on the Jets. They have Michael Carter the second, a cornerback on the Jets. This is a favorable matchup for Jacoby Myers. And then when you start to look into the player props here, let's start to tell a story. Zach Wilson's props to throw 1 interception or multiple interceptions are way higher than Mac Jones, as you would expect, as Mac Jones is this accurate quarterback. He was the number 1 accuracy quarterback in week 1 of all quarterbacks, over 72% actual true completion percentage. Insane. This is a mismatch. This should be about a 7-point spread. If Tom Brady was on these Patriots, it would be about an 8 to 9-point spread. I'm not saying Mac Jones is Tom Brady, but he's not going to make the mistakes, and he's going to be able to take advantage of the secondary. So the -4.5 is gone because I took that yesterday, last night, and now I'm recording this video the next morning. But PointsBet, you'd still find that at -25, which is not the worst of odds. But the -5.5 I still think is fine. Again, I think this should be about a 7-point spread, which you rarely see 7-point spreads. They're usually 6 because of the teasers. But right here, you can find that at -113 on Cosmo. FanDuel will give you the best number as of this recording at -115. It'll give you the same number, -5.5, as DraftKings or FoxBet, but it will give you the best juice overall. There's still a solid number out there on FanDuel at -125 juice for the -4.5. So it's very important to shop here, because if you were to go on DraftKings and take the -5.5 that they're offering, you're paying a -125 juice, where you can go on FanDuel and get the -125 juice, but get the 4.5. So you're basically getting more bang for your buck if you were to do that. That's why these odds comparisons tools are so damn powerful. I think OddsJam also has like some sort of newsletter you can sign up for when you sign up, and they talk about arbitrage betting or middling the numbers. There's opportunities every week, more and more now. There's more sports books out there. Middling the numbers basically means that you guarantee to win. You got a number this way earlier in the week, it moved to this, and you slam it there. So now you're guaranteed kind of a win. Or if you middle it, you're guaranteed a double win if you get it right in the middle of that one and still have the obvious option, so you can kind of cancel out your bet no matter what. But if it lands in the middle of that, right, if you have the over and now you middled it and it just has to hit like 47 or 48 for you to double your money and win both bets, but worst case scenario, you win one and you wash out, those are some of the opportunities that they'll show you each week. You don't have to go looking for them. So pretty cool tool to have. And now the final bet, if you're still here, hey, 2 seconds of your time to like and subscribe. The final bet is going to be an under, and this one kind of scares me a little bit because there are some signs to point to the over here, but I think both teams will be able to run the ball this week, and that is going to be the Tennessee Titans and Seattle Seahawks under 54.5. Tennessee last week looked awful, right? We looked at the EPA. They were in the bottom left. Both offense and defense, they looked awful. They were really not built to play from behind. Even with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown out there, they had a lot of struggle. Chester Rogers led this team in receiving yards. Yes, Chester Rogers, the old Colt, the man who really wasn't on a team last year for most of the season. And on the opposite side, Russ was cooking with 4 touchdowns. He got the new guy involved in Gerald Everett. You had Lockett playing fantastic. Metcalf found the end zone and got into the party. And they didn't really run the ball a lot. They ended up just going deep on play actions. They were very efficient with Russell Wilson, as he has been his whole entire career. But now you have this week where both teams are going to have a really nice run blocking advantage. And if that's the case, you know that the Tennessee Titans want to run the ball. They want to give 25-plus attempts to Derrick Henry, who struggled last week, especially when the game blew out, just didn't get opportunities. And Chris Carson is more than capable. He's right now a top 5 projected fantasy running back for me this week, meaning he's going to get a lot of opportunities and be efficient on them. Tennessee last week was the second worst in the NFL in total offense and defense, only behind my beloved Green Bay Packers, and we can show you that right here if we pull it up. All the way down here, who's the worst? All the way to the left and the furthest down, the Green Bay Packers. Who's right next to them? The Tennessee Titans. They were absolutely atrocious. If you watched any part of that game, you know that they were absolutely atrocious. Tennessee also played at the 3rd slowest pace in general, so they're not going to be playing at a pace just because they run the ball. They usually will be like that. It's usually like the Baltimore Ravens. They're not going to be playing at a fast pace, which means it's harder for them to come back in games like last week, or harder for them to put up quick points. A.J. Brown and Julio should help that a little bit, but in general, they're built not to come from behind or put up points in a hurry. Defense was terrible, number 30th in pass rush, number 31st in pass protection on offense for Tannehill, and now you're going to have Seattle, who had an average pass rush coming into that spot. Tennessee in week 1 was number 29 in overall offense. But here's where I think it starts to shift. You have Derrick Henry with a positive 16% run blocking advantage against Seattle, who in week 1 ranked 27th, borderline bottom 5 in the league in tackling. That's not going to work if you're facing Derrick Henry. So if you can actually establish that and Henry can start picking up these 7 or 8 yard or 10+ yard chunk plays, it's going to milk the clock, and it's going to lead to just slower plays and lower scoring. That's the goal. On the opposite side of this game, you have Seattle, who it looks like a complete matchup. If you wanted to take the spread on Seattle, that's completely fun with me, because Seattle was a top 5 team last year, as you can see right here, top 5 team. These were the 3 best teams all the way up here last week, and then Seattle's basically right there with LA in terms of who's the next in the top 5 on both offense and defensive EPA. Expected points added. Week 1, they ranked number 5 in passing, so the passing game is there. They're going to have a positive pass blocking advantage against Tennessee, who struggled to generate pressure, and Seattle's offensive line trading for Gabe Jackson, adding some pieces, actually looked solid week 1, but the big thing is Chris Carson has one of the best run blocking advantages of the week, a positive 32% run blocking advantage for week 1, and last week in week 1 to start the year, Tennessee ranked number 28 at stopping the run against old dusty guys like James Conner, and not the greatest of just pounder backs, more of a satellite type back hybrid in Chase Edmonds. So when you you look at this game, you can see a couple things. You can see the over happening because Seattle just plays efficient again. They're great. They put up 28 to 30 points, and then it's garbage time scoring from Tennessee. Tennessee then only has to basically put up a 24-point game. Can they get those 3 touchdowns in there? That's where you can see this going. I'm looking at it as the case of they got dominated last week. They know they can't play from behind. They're going to try to run this ball with Derrick Henry, and they're going to have the ability to based on the overall personnel of Seattle's linebacking and defensive line. And the exact same can be said about the Seattle side. You know you have Russell Wilson. Maybe Tennessee goes a little bit more zone heavy. Wilson would probably dominate that, but it would eliminate some big plays. But Chris Carson is going to be able to do whatever he wants for a team that I still believe deep down in his heart, Pete Carroll, no matter how good Russell Wilson looked last week at cooking efficiency-wise, 4 passing touchdowns, he still wants Chris Carson to be the star of the show. So we take the under 54.5 on this game. And you can find that under a little bit juiced up at -120, at -125. If you didn't want to pay the juice, meaning that you have to put 125 down to end up winning 100, if you wanted to get a little bit lower, you can take the under 53.5, and that's where you start to get a little bit better odds. You start to actually get plus money on Cosmo. You start to get -110 on DraftKings. So it's like a $15 difference. What this means is that if you put 110 on this one here on DraftKings, you for under 53.5, you win $100. You only have to put up 110. But for $15 more, you'll at least get another point. Do you think those $15 are worth the point? I would personally say no, they're not. You can get another bet with that. You have to try and get these bets earlier in the week. So I got the under 54.5. The under 54 is out there at a solid line. So is the under 53.5. I think both are fine. So those are the 5 bets for week 2. Be sure to use Odds Jam. They're a new partner of the show, but they're also just really efficient, right? Like I'm already using sites like that. They reached out and they said, hey, would you want to just introduce us to your viewers? And I said, yeah, I use odds boards all the time. I looked at theirs odds boards and I was like, God damn, most odds boards only have overs, unders, and money lines. Yours have per quarter, per half, per how many touchdowns will the game go to overtime. You get to see all these odds comparisons, which is very beneficial if you're in a state, which a lot of states now, majority are, have multiple sports books legal in them. So be sure to check out OddsGem. You just use my code SAL, like it is code SAL for everything, and you'll get 30% off if you want to sign up for any of their exclusive packages. Otherwise, just use their board and check it out. So that'll be all linked down below. There's the 5 bets for the week. Best of luck. More content coming as the week goes on. Tonight, there's a Thursday night football game, depending on when you're watching this. We'll be live for that. Friday, final thoughts on just the entire week from a betting, a props, and a DFS standpoint. Saturday, that one dude will focus on props and low-owned DFS plays. And then the Sunday live stream to top it all off. I'll see y'all in these videos. Hey, appreciate you tuning in. Like, subscribe before you go, and I'll see you in the next one.